Hey kids, welcome to Faith Tunes World, where Bible adventures come alive through fun and colorful animation. Get ready, because today we're diving into an amazing Bible story that's truly unforgettable. Abraham and Sarah, Stars of Promise. Have you ever looked up at the night sky and tried to count all the stars? It's impossible, right? There are just too many. Well, today's story is about a promise from God that was as big and as amazing as all the stars in the universe. It's the story of a man named Abram and his wife Sarai. Our story begins a long time ago in a city called Ur. Abram and Sarai lived there. They had a nice home and everything they needed, but there was one thing that made them sad. They didn't have any children, and they wanted a family more than anything. One day God spoke to Abram. God said, "Abram, I want you to pack up your things, leave your home, and go to a new land that I will show you." Can you imagine that? Leaving everything you know behind? It must have been a little scary. But God also gave Abram an incredible promise. He said, "I will make you into a great nation. I'll bless you and make your name great. All the people on earth will be blessed through you." Even though Abram didn't know exactly where he was going, he trusted God. He packed up his tents, gathered his family, including his nephew Lot, and all his belongings, and started on the journey. Abram, Sarai, and their whole group traveled for a very long time, like a giant camping trip that went on and on. Finally, they arrived in a land called Canaan. It was a beautiful land, and God said to Abram, "This is the land I will give to your descendants." Years went by. Abram and Sarai were getting older and older. They loved living in the land God had given them, but they still had no children. Abram started to wonder about God's promise. How could he become a great nation with no children? One night, God spoke to Abram again. He took him outside and said, "Look up at the sky and count the stars if you can." Abram looked up at the sparkling, endless ocean of stars. It was breathtaking. Then God said, "That is how many descendants you will have. Your family will be as countless as the stars in the sky." Abram believed God. He had faith that God would keep his amazing promise, even when it seemed impossible. That night, God made a special agreement, a covenant, with Abram, promising him the land and a huge family. But waiting is hard, isn't it? As more time passed, Sarai got an idea. Maybe God meant for them to have a family in a different way. She had a servant named Hagar. Sarai told Abram, "Perhaps you can have a child with Hagar, and that will be our family." Abram agreed. Hagar had a baby boy, and they named him Ishmael. Abram loved Ishmael very much. But this wasn't quite God's plan. Sometimes, when we try to help God's plan along in our own way, things can get a little complicated and even cause sadness. And that's what happened. There was jealousy and unhappiness in the family. But God is so good. He saw Hagar and Ishmael's sadness and promised to take care of them too. Many more years passed. Abram was now 99 years old, and Sarai was 90. They were very old. It seemed like the time for them to have a baby had long gone. But you know what? Nothing is too hard for God. God appeared to Abram again and said, "I am God Almighty. I am making my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations." Then God gave them new names to match this new promise. He said, "Your name will no longer be Abram. Your name will be Abraham, which means father of many. And your wife will no longer be called Sarai. Her name will be Sarah, which means princess. I will bless her. She will give you a son." He thought, "A son? I'm 100 years old and Sarah is 90. How can this be?" It just sounded too wild to be true. Not long after that, on a hot sunny afternoon, Abraham was sitting by his tent when he saw 3 visitors approaching. Being a kind and welcoming host, he ran to greet them. He bowed low and invited them to rest in the shade, wash their feet, and have something to eat. Sarah quickly baked some fresh bread, and Abraham prepared a fine meal for them. As they were eating, one of the visitors asked, "Where is your wife, Sarah?" Abraham replied, "She is inside the tent." Then the guest, who was actually the Lord, said something astonishing. "I will surely return to you about this time next year. And Sarah, your wife, will have a son." Inside the tent, Sarah was listening. When she heard this, she laughed to herself. Just like Abraham, she thought, "After I am old and my husband is old, will I really have a baby? That's impossible." The Lord knew she had laughed and said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh? Is anything too hard for the Lord?" Sarah got a little scared and said, "I didn't laugh." But the Lord gently replied, "Yes, you did laugh." It was more like God was saying, "I know it sounds unbelievable, but trust me, and guess what? It's just as God had promised. About a year later, the impossible happened. Sarah gave birth to a baby boy. They named him Isaac, which means, he laughs. How perfect is that? Abraham and Sarah's laughter of disbelief had turned into laughter of pure joy. Their home, which had been quiet for so long, was now filled with the happy sounds of a baby. God had kept his incredible, star-sized promise. The story of Abraham and Sarah teaches us that God's promises are always true, even when we have to wait a very, very long time. It teaches us to have faith even when things seem impossible. And it shows us that God has a perfect plan and a perfect time for everything. It can turn our doubtful laughter into joyful laughter. The next time you look up at the stars, remember Abraham and Sarah, and remember that the God who made all those stars can do amazing and wonderful things in your life too. You just have to trust him. Thanks for watching today's story, kids.